Welcome to Aging Insight with your host, John Ross and Lisa Shoalmire. This program is made possible by
Welcome to Aging Insight. I'm your host, John Ross, here with my partner and co-host, Lisa Shoalmire, and you're watching the best place to get information related to aging in place, aging on your own terms, navigating through those remaining years. We know that you can do it on your own terms, that you can accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish, but the key to getting there and getting through this easily and peacefully is with knowledge. And that's what we're here to do, is to provide you that knowledge. You know, one of the things we always talk about here on the show is that most people, when we talk to them, they want to avoid nursing home care. Well, that's a great goal, and it's a goal that many of us share, but unfortunately for some folks, that's either the best alternative based on their medical needs, or it's the only alternative based on the lack of other care resources that are available. And so when somebody is navigating through that nursing home stay, a lot of times problems come around.
Yeah, well, that's right, John. You know, sometimes when we utilize that nursing home care because it's just necessary. There's a lot of things that patients and their families sometimes become dissatisfied about, whether that has to do with, issues with the care, or if it just has to do with issues with the paperwork and business practices and insurance and how all of that works. But you know, long-term care at a nursing facility or nursing home is fraught with pitfalls that really there's a bunch of law out there that addresses some of the most common pitfalls. And there's also just some ways to deal with those to where your loved one gets the care they need and you are satisfied that you understand what services you're getting and how it is being paid for.
That's right. So when we start talking about nursing home care, the first thing is to remember is that there were quite a bit of problems with nursing homes, and they've certainly gotten a lot better. And part of the reason that many of them have gotten a lot better is because of something called the Nursing Home Reform Act. The Nursing Home Reform Act came into place several years ago, and you could really kind of boil down the entire law into one general concept, and that is that a person who is in a nursing home, their space should be as close to a home-like environment as possible. And that's really kind of the goal of the Nursing Home Reform Act was to make nursing homes very similar to a home environment. And with that comes a number of rights for the patient and a number of responsibilities to the facility. And you can use this Nursing Home Reform Act and its provisions to address a number of the most common complaints that we see as elder law attorneys.
Yeah, you know, and that is nice that, you know, as a family, if you're aware of the Nursing Home Reform Act, you know, I can assure you that the administrator and management staff at the facility that you might be visiting, or maybe you have a resident residing in, they're aware of the law as well. So, you know, like John said a moment ago, the idea was to make it as home-like as possible. And that might not mean the exact environment that would be home, but it does mean the types of rights and independence that one has at home. You know, for instance, maybe you were not a very early riser. Well, if you tend to sleep in and you're someone that eventually needs nursing home care, if you are a resident at a nursing home, you know, you can still sleep in. And we've had complaints where a nursing facility said, well, no, everybody has to be up by a certain time because we have health aides that are going to assist with hygiene needs or mealtime, by say 7:30 a.m. And you're told that you have to be awake and prepared to participate in those services by 7:30. Well, if you were at home, would you have to give up by 7:30 in the morning? And the answer is no. And that same answer is true at a nursing facility. Just because the facility may streamline some services at certain times of day does not mean that you are required or forced to participate in those services at that time. If it's more comfortable for you to have those services at a later point during the day, then communication with the nursing home management, perhaps dropping a name such as the Nursing Home Reform Act, and you should be able to get an accommodation to meet your schedule.
That's right. And so when we're talking about, whether it's what time you get up or whether or not you want to participate in certain activities, the Nursing Home Reform Act is very clear that the resident has the right to choose their schedule, their choice of activities, and their health care. And this is actually this is another one of these common problems that pops up occasionally, is where a facility says, well, we've just kind of determined what medical needs are appropriate, so you're just going to do the things that we tell you to do. We're going to assign you physical therapy, we're going to assign you medical treatment based on what the facility thinks. And the Nursing Home Reform Act actually addresses this as well. There's a specific provision in there that says that, first of all, before a plan of treatment is put together, there's supposed to be a group of individuals, of doctors, nurses, psychiatrists, if necessary, are supposed to all get together and put together a plan. And when this plan is being developed, the family member, the resident or their representative is supposed to be a part of this, to develop this plan based on what the resident needs, but also what the resident wants. And so again, the law is very specific that the resident has a right to be involved in their choice of treatments while they're at that facility. And if that care plan changes along the way, that resident also has the right to know about any changes and can agree or refuse those treatments. So again, if you keep thinking back on it, if you could do it at home, you should be able to do it at the nursing home. That's kind of a good rule of thumb there.
Well, and what I like, John, about talking about a care plan and putting that together is the resident, and if the resident is not competent, then that power of attorney or that closest family member who's representing that resident, they have the right to participate in those care planning meetings. And you can also bring others that you feel like would be of assistance to the family in evaluating that plan. If you have a daughter that's an RN, maybe that's someone you'd want to bring along to that meeting. So it's all about a collaborative effort, and you are to be given advanced notice of that meeting so that you can make it an opportunity to attend.
That's right. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about a few more common problems that arise and how to address them. So stick around.
Hi there, I'm Larry Sims. It's been my privilege for the past several years to be a volunteer board member of Hospice of Texarkana, and there I'm able to represent community members like you. We continually customize our end-of-life care to better meet the needs of our community. As an example, our medical director and nurse practitioners still make visits to homes and facilities. Call today to learn more about the help we can give your family. Hospice of Texarkana, the nonprofit hospice established in 1985 for the community, by the community.
With my dad, it was in a hospital setting. And in his situation, he fell into renal failure. He also helped us make the decision to be on hospice. I have to admit, it took a huge weight off our shoulders for him to be willing. That offered us a lot of comfort, along with the hospice company itself, but it gave us closure. And it helped us through the entire process.
SEMA Hospice, comfort and care when it matters most.
Off of McKnight Road in Texarkana, Texas, the Oaks Independent are apartments for seniors who love secure peace of mind and consistency in their lives. You're going to fall in love with this newly built luxurious residential establishment for the aging adult. All bills are included and all apartments are wheelchair accessible, inclusive with all the amenities. Live in style, comfort, and accessibility. Live independent. Call today to schedule a tour. The Oaks Independent.
Welcome back to Aging Insight. I'm Lisa Shoalmire, and I'm here with John Ross, and we are elder law attorneys based here in the Arklatex area. You know, today we're talking about, we're troubleshooting today, I guess you'd say. We're talking about how if you're at a nursing facility, if there are issues at that facility, what are those common issues and what are your legal rights when you are faced with those issues at a nursing facility? You know, and we've talked how, you know, the Nursing Home Reform Act has made it so that the facilities are supposed to honor the choices of their patients as if their patients were at home. You know, when do you eat breakfast? When do you get up? What if you don't want to do something that day? That is the idea behind the Nursing Home Reform Act, and we're just kind of picking out some different common problems we see and how that act applies to those.
Right. So, Lisa, let me give you a scenario. So, you know, we have somebody whose mother is at a nursing facility, and their mother has Alzheimer's, and she wanders. And this is not a locked facility. And the nursing home tells the family, they say, look, your mother, you know, will wander off, and normally that's not a problem except at meal times. And at meal times, we don't have enough staff supervising everybody. So while we have her sitting at the dinner table, we're going to restrain her arm to her chair so that she can't get up and walk out. But this is just for mom's protection.
Right, yeah, this is just for your family members' protection, and this is necessary. And you know, and as the caregiver for this patient, you know, it just doesn't sit exactly right. Yeah,
that's right. And so again, the Nursing Home Reform Act has some very clear rules related to restraints. And restraints can actually come in two forms. There's the physical restraint, like I described, where we're holding somebody down or using ropes or straps or something to keep them in place. But then there are also chemical restraints. And these would be your drugs, your narcotics, and different things that can you know, keep somebody basically comatose. And the Nursing Home Reform Act says that restraints are not to be used. They're just not. Now, there's a couple of very small exceptions for situations where, like for example, if there's an imminent danger to the resident or to another resident, then a temporary use of a restraint can be used. The other circumstance is if there is a specific doctor's order related to the necessity of a restraint, and that order must be very specific as to why it's needed, and it should have a very limited time frame. So for example, you know, we have a psychotic episode that we think will pass in a matter of days once the medication gets, you know, through working in its system. So for the next few hours, restraints are okay. Something like that, where it's very temporary and ordered by the doctor, that's okay. But otherwise, restraints are off limits.
Yeah, and that's right, John. One thing about restraints is there is no such thing as a standing order at a facility for the use of restraints at the convenience or of the facility, or at the time someone at the facility less than a doctor just determines it's more convenient. So again, that must have a very specific order, so from the doctor.
Right. So anytime you hear that sort of thing, you ought to be immediately jumping up and saying, look, no, restraints are inappropriate. And excuses like, well, we just don't have the staff, or the person's too hard to deal with, or things like that, those just don't fly. There's no basis for any of that in the law.
Yeah, so one of the other things that we see quite commonly is, keeping seniors healthy by making sure they get good nutrition is a big part of what goes on at a skilled nursing facility. So, it's very important that those seniors get the sustenance and nutrition that they need. And a lot of times this means special diets, soft diets, protein diets, but it also means that the patient is able to, to take in that food, whether it's by feeding themselves or with assistance from a staff member. And sometimes with a senior, there can be swallowing issues, or just someone that really takes their sweet time with their meal. And one of the things we've seen is a recommendation from the facility that if the patient is taking too long to eat, or is particularly messy, or they're losing weight, that there's a recommendation for a feeding tube to be placed in the resident, so that way the nutrition gets in very quickly and it's assured, and the staff can service that peg tube, get in the nutrition, and go on to their next duty. That's a very serious thing to do, and so again, much like restraints, recommending a placement of a feeding tube when really, if it just takes some more patience or some more staff time to make sure that patient's getting their nutrition, a feeding tube is just not appropriate.
Yeah, and a lot of times you will hear excuses like, well, if we do the feeding tube, the person is less likely to choke on the food, or that that if we do the feeding tube, that will prolong their life. And there have actually been medical studies that have shown that a person is no less likely to aspirate or choke from being orally fed versus having a feeding tube, and that the use of a feeding tube also does not prolong a person's life. So when you hear those excuses, they're not based in science, but usually the underlying reason is it's just difficult on the facility and their staff, and it would be a whole lot easier on them if there was a feeding tube. But that's just not the case. That should be feeding tube should be an absolute last resort. And if you're thinking about a feeding tube, you also need to be talking to hospice, because this is usually a end-of-life type situation when you start talking about feeding tubes.
Well, and that's also a thing, John, where we're talking about a feeding tube, then let's get, kind of like restraints, let's get that doctor right back in to very specifically order such a thing in collaboration with the family, rather than the recommendation coming from the facility.
Right, and of course keeping in mind the residents' wishes if they had a living will or advance directive in place. So we're going to talk about a couple more, primarily related to some financial issues when you're dealing with the nursing home, and we'll talk about that when we come back here in just a second, so stick around.
All our moments should be cherished. SEMA Hospice provides comfort care when you need it most, with compassion, dignity, and respect. Along with Jordan Health Services, SEMA Hospice provides compassionate continuity of care. SEMA Hospice, comfort and care when it matters most.
As things get older, they require more care. This car and I have seen a lot of miles together, but because I take care of her, she runs just like she did in 1955. That's why I chose the Wadley Senior Clinic, with an individualized care plan designed just for me and a convenient location off Jefferson Avenue. They have everything to keep me running like new. It's not about the miles, it's about the journey. Let the Wadley Senior Clinic keep you happy, healthy, and cruising down the road of life.
Hi there, I'm Larry Sims. It's been my privilege for the past several years to to be a volunteer board member of Hospice of Texarkana, and there I'm able to represent community members like you. We continually customize our end-of-life care to better meet the needs of our community. As an example, our medical director and nurse practitioner still make visits to homes and facilities. Call today to learn more about the help we can give your family. Hospice of Texarkana, the nonprofit hospice established in 1985 for the community, by the community.
Off of McKnight Road in Texarkana, Texas, the Oaks Independent are apartments for seniors who love secure peace of mind and consistency in their lives. You're going to fall in love with this newly built luxurious residential establishment for the aging adult. All bills are included and all apartments are wheelchair accessible, inclusive with all the amenities. Live in style, comfort, and accessibility. Live independent. Call today to schedule a tour. The Oaks Independent.
From our first moments to our final days, life's journey should be remembered free of burden and worry. Families should be cherished. SEMA Hospice provides comfort care, dignity, and respect. Learn more about SEMA Hospice at SEMAHospice.com. SEMA Hospice, comfort and care when it matters most.
Welcome back to Aging Insight, everybody. I'm John Ross, here with Lisa Shoalmire, and today we're addressing some of the common problems with nursing home residents and their families, but more importantly, how to resolve those. And one of our ongoing themes throughout today has been the Nursing Home Reform Act, because it addresses so many of these various issues. One of the things we talk about, again, people don't want to have to go to a nursing home, but they also don't want to go broke. And the cost of nursing care is very expensive. Private pay can be $4,000 to $6,000 a month, and because of that, many people will rely on Medicare or Medicaid to pay some portion of all of this. And one of the things in all of this is that Medicaid cannot discriminate, the nursing home cannot discriminate against the person based on who's paying the bill. So if they've got, if they've got an empty bed and they accept Medicaid, they can't necessarily turn you away just because you're eligible for Medicaid, hoping that maybe they'll get somebody who will pay more privately. So they can't discriminate against that. But then you also get into some issues there in the admission contract with, let's say there is a balance due out there. Who's financially responsible for that sort of thing?
Right, so typically when a person admits to a nursing facility, either they admit themselves and they sign all the paperwork, and for many of you who have, recently had any encounters with the medical system, you know that you have to sign a stack of papers, anytime you're accessing care, and it's certainly, I think, a little thicker of a stack when we're talking about residing at a facility. So oftentimes that admission packet at a facility, number one, it's yay thick, and they go through it with you in a very quick, rapid manner. So my advice would be to ask for that admission packet and take it home prior to admission and have a chance to look over it. But more importantly, if you are signing on behalf of a loved one that needs that type of care, make sure that you sign that for that person, but you're indicating on the documentation that you are not personally signing, that all of the execution of these documents is on behalf of the patient. Normally you're going to do that because you have a power of attorney for that patient, in which case you will sign the document with the patient's name by your name, and then comma POA or some other indication that you are signing with some authority under a power of attorney, but you're not signing personally. It's kind of like co-signing for a teenager on a car. In this situation, you want the purchaser of the services, they're the ones that are liable for the cost of those services. You may simply be signing paperwork in order to facilitate the admission process. So just make sure you're signing that paperwork with the patient as the obligated person.
That's right. And if the facility were to say, for example, well, you have to sign this financial responsibility personally for your mother or for your father, that's a condition of admission. Well, that is a very clear violation of the Nursing Home Reform Act. It is against the law to require a third party to guarantee payment for that resident. So the only person that's responsible for that bill should be the resident and the resident themselves. So that can come up a lot, and we've certainly seen that come up quite a bit. And there's a lot of things in that nursing home admission packet, and really there's no reason why you can't take that and find an elder law attorney who's familiar with these, who's seen them before, and can guide you through it and tell you what to sign, what's okay to sign, how to sign, and what parts of it you absolutely shouldn't sign, like arbitration agreements and things like that. So there's lots of little pieces to it.
That's right. You know, an arbitration agreement is basically your agreement stating that if there's any damages, that you will not access the court system and file a lawsuit against the facility. And if you sign an arbitration agreement, the law is pretty strong that you're stuck with it. But again, the Nursing Home Reform Act does not require you to sign an arbitration agreement as a condition of admission. So you need to watch for those. And you know, it's okay to question the business person about what the document says. But you know, the bottom line is they're there to do their job for their employer, which is the facility. That person who's smiling and doing the admission, they are not there to protect your interest or represent you.
That's right. Well, you know, Lisa, we've covered about, 4 or 5 or 6 little problems here. But you and I have both given presentations on this several times here where we've listed upwards of 20 different problems. So there's a lot more to this. When you're navigating through this system, one resource that's available out there is the Ombudsman, which is a program through the Area Agency on Aging where you can get some help with this. So utilize all the sources that are out there to help you when you run into problems with nursing homes.
Yeah, nothing. I think the Ombudsman program is one of the best things. That it's an advocate for families trying to resolve problems. So it's a great program.
That's right. Well, you've reached the end of another edition of Aging Insights. Stick around with us. If you ever have any questions, you can always call our live call-in show on 107.1 at noon every Saturday, and you can find us on the internet at aginginsight.com. So stick around, and we'll see you next time on Aging Insight.
All right, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this week's Aging Insight program with John Ross and Lisa Shoalmire. This program is made possible by